So I guess moving forward, what we're talking about is, I guess this slide here, we're talking about a nirvana state where we think that ultimately if this inflection moves forward and if everybody's kind of playing along, we solve some of the challenges that we set, we will be continue to provide the packet delivery, but except we will be delivering it into the storage and the tools, the analytical tools that is, they will focus on what they do best, which is the analysis, right, the inference and whatnot. And we offload them from the cost of packet capture and, you know, these expenses that we talked about. Now, this is tomorrow, right? This is not today. We're not talking, you know, starting right now, we're going to stop delivering packets, but this is where we're getting into. So what are some of the things that the audience can do today? Let's try to wrap this up with some of the use cases that we've seen, and you know, that you don't need to wait for nirvana to happen, but there's definitely some use cases that we've already validated and we've been looking at it, that you can start leveraging your MPBs, at least those from VSS, to help you get to this vision.
Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple of use cases using vSpool, which I've already introduced, which are related to security, which are related to compliance. But before we do that, I'm going to quickly introduce another feature that's upcoming in our NPBs, which is vIndex. So vIndex is a feature for generating metadata. So the NPB layer directly generates metadata, which is FTP'd over in a text-based format into a storage server of your choice. So using vIndex, you can extract the L2, L3, L4 headers of your network packets, and these are in an open format, so they can be analyzed in Hadoop. So having said that, let's look at some of the individual use cases that we're talking about.
Sorry, so the first use case, it has to do with accelerating security intelligence, right? Again, what we're talking about is the challenge is the unknown, right? So a lot of people have had IPSs and IDSs and trying to keep up with the signatures. A very simple one is, regardless of what network intelligence or security intelligence tool you do, whether it's signature-based or behavioral, is going to trigger on some intelligence, right? It's going to, you know, basically provide you the bad IP address, you know, the source destination and whatnot. And this could happen in one location in your network. So you may have a snort-based signature, in this case SourceFire, and that's the one we validated with, but it could equally work with any other IDSs, IPSs, or analytics tool. In this case, what SourceFire triggers on a high alert, we'll latch onto that, and we have an API call from SourceFire that basically sends that information. In this case, indeed, is the IP addresses involved in that event that triggered as a high alert. So now the incident analyst doesn't have to go reconfigure spam port, and it can start asking questions. Is this a single incident? Is this part of a bigger thing? Is this beginning? Is this the end of it? How am I seeing this traffic elsewhere in my network? Who else is this IP address talking to? Or how many other people are talking to this IP address? And what we're doing, we're taking that information, passing it on to the MPB layer, and the MPB layers that you have across your network can now start capturing, you know, any traffic to and from those IP addresses, those suspicious or known bad IP addresses, and start creating a PCAP and write it into your NAS in open format and send a syslog alert to your SIM or your, you know, incident, management view. So now we've shrunk the time that it takes to actually do the incident analysis and accelerated, you know, security intelligence. So that's been a use case that we've talked to many of the customers, and are very much, you know, looking into it, and they already see the value. And this is just with the, you know, addition of the vSpool. Oh, we have another use case here, then I'm going to let Adwait comment on.
Okay, so here's another use case that you can absolutely do today. So for those of you who don't know, it's said that about 70% of the volumes on US exchanges is actually done by algorithmic trading rather than by human traders. So what algorithmic trading means is that an algorithm looks at the market data, runs its own algorithm, its models and whatever, and decides to make buy and sell decisions automatically without any human intervention. The problem with that, sure, if it works great, the company that's running these algorithms is making money. But the problem here is that how do you know that the algorithm is not going to bet the farm on a stock that's going to go down and lose everything you have? So a solution to that, where PCAP will come into play, is that you can store the PCAPs from the market data. So the market data is disseminated from exchanges in the form of UDP feeds. And the vSpool can be used to store these in the PCAP format on an open storage. And now, once you have the PCAPs for the market data, you can play these back, put your algorithm in a sandbox, play these back, and pretend that that's coming from the market, and look at what your algorithm does. So now, you're able to backtest your algorithm using, say, yesterday's or day before yesterday's or last month's market data to see what your algorithm would have done if it were live on the market on that day. Would it have made money? Would it have lost money? Additionally, you can also take PCAPs from an exceptional day. For example, you can take the PCAPs from when the flash crash happened a few years ago and play them back to your algorithm to see if it still gracefully handles the situation and doesn't lose money. So that's one way of going.
So did we talk about being able to model, right, using the historical data? And again, this is very much aligned with the big data idea. And I could totally see this also be applicable to the security side, except in this case, you have some historical data and you don't know if you were hit by, let's say Heartbleed or some other net new threat that's coming in, and you want to know, hey, am I being, affected by this? So this allows you to go run the new intelligence and go look for that data and do that modeling, which is a great step forward. The last use case is more on the V-index that you introduced earlier.
So the previous use cases, the one that Tony talked about was more about the targeted capture of PCAPs. The one that I talked about was about a more comprehensive capture of PCAPs. And finally, we have an example use case here using V-index. So as I said, V-index is an application in our NPVs which produces metadata. And what you can use this metadata is to process it in Hadoop, which is big data there, and identify anomalous flows. So for example, you could be processing your metadata and identifying the normal amount of FTP traffic that your network sees, and then you can identify any departure from that to further investigate. For another example, the DNS tunneling exploit that I talked about earlier in the examples, you could absolutely do that, where you can analyze the data set that you have to identify any anomalous DNS flows to further investigate that. So the point here is that once you have the metadata into Hadoop, there's a lot of interesting analysis that can be done on it because it is text format, and then you have this huge amount of processing power in the form of your Hadoop cluster.
Yes, so we have the first audience here asking if he can get a copy of the presentation. So yes, we will have a follow-up email and we will send you a PDF copy of this presentation, as well as a link for you to download the attachment available here for the webinar today. The next question we have is from an audience asking about, is 20G the max throughput for vSpool?
So at this point, we have a 10 gig link which connects to vSpool. So at any given time, one port of vSpool can handle 10 gig of data. A module can have up to 4 ports of vSpool, and an NPV can have a group of these modules. So for a single port, 10 gig, and then depending on your need, you can have as many vSpool ports as you want, so you can scale vSpool to whatever line rates you need.
So could you do like an 80 gig logical on one of the NPVs that would have 8 ports, for instance?
Absolutely, and well, the NPVs are able to intelligently load balance traffic, and so you can have 8 vSpool ports, intelligently load balance the data so that each individual flow goes to only one vSpool port, and you can have all 80 gigs being transferred into PCAPs at line rate.
But this is not bound by a limitation of a backplane. This is done at the port level, right? So it's all hardware accelerated, and it's done optimized for this functionality.
Absolutely. So the USP for VSS has always been the fact that we do things in hardware, and so we're able to keep up with line rate no matter what. So you can stand back to back absolute 10 gig at our NPVs, and we're going to be handling that no problem.
Okay.
Thank you. Next question we have is about which analytic tool do you expect to move to virtualization first?
Well, as we've seen based on some of the use cases, I do see network performance monitoring tools already kind of looking into that. Performance monitoring tools that are going into the cloud right? They obviously have to be able to take advantage of the virtualization environment, and it would be very difficult to get those packets. But if you could, take those packets, put them in storage. So we're already seeing, trends that would validate that, performance monitoring, whether it's network or application, are already moving into that, this ahead of others, as well as, I would say, security analytics, right? Today, they're still burdened by the rate of packet capture and writing to disk and reading from disk. I mean, there's probably none that I know that can, write a 10 gig and actually process that. And we work with many of them to help them scale today on the network monitoring side, where we aggregate and we send the traffic to them. So my prediction would be in that order, right? So performance monitoring, probably those, moving into a cloud faster. They're going to look at that, as well as the security analytics.
Also, I'll just like to add there that you don't really need to wait for all the tools to move into this virtualization way of doing things to be able to do something with this data, because even the existing tools, for example, Splunk, or the virtualization tools that exist for data sets right now, can be immediately leveraged for network data when the network data is brought into a text format, for example, the metadata. So for PCAPs, yes, you need virtualization of the tools that handle PCAPs, but text data is already being handled by a lot of visualization tools, by a lot of tools such as Splunk, and they can directly be leveraged to access and process the metadata.
That's it for all the questions. For those of you who may have additional questions after the event today, you can check out our Big Data Solution page with the link being shown in the message box right now. And as far as attachments to this webinar, we have a few resources available for you to read and learn more. At our solution page, we have the solution brief, we have the infographic, we also have a product brief about vSpool. You can always ask a technical question or request more information post-event. And earlier, Adway have given us an overview about one use case in the financial services sector, particularly the algorithmic trading. For those of you who are interested, we also have a next series coming up for financial services, with part 1 being on May 28th. And you can check out the abstract and information at the bit.ly link available on the screen. And the subsequent 3 parts, we will highlight different use cases that we have seen implemented in the financial sector, and one of which will be part of this big data solutions. Thank you all for attending today. We hope you find this series informative. As always, feedbacks and comments are welcome, and please give us the rating at the end of the sessions. And we look forward to seeing you on our May 28th Financial Services webinar series. Thank you, Adway. Thank you, Tony. Have a great day.
Thank you.